The sound of my daughter's small feet running across the marble floor should have been music to my ears, but tonight it felt like thunder. 6-year-old Isabella burst through my home office door, her brown eyes wide with fear and confusion, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her tiny fist. "Mummy, tonight my father is going to take away your fortune," she whispered, her voice shaking as she pressed the paper into my hands. My heart stopped. The document was a bank transfer authorization form, filled out in my husband's handwriting, requesting the immediate transfer of $2 million from my business account to an offshore account I'd never seen before. The date was today's date. The time stamp showed it was scheduled for midnight, just 3 hours away. "Where did you get this, baby?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as my world crumbled around me. Daddy was talking to Miss Rachel in his office. They didn't see me hiding behind the door. "Daddy said he was going to take all your money tonight and run away with Miss Rachel. They said mean things about you, Mummy." They laughed. Rachel Martinez. My business partner. My trusted friend of 8 years. The woman who had stood beside me as we built Henderson Tech Solutions from nothing into a $50 million empire. The woman who had held my hand through every late night, every difficult client meeting, every moment of doubt. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. Richard's signature was already there, forged to look like mine. The account numbers were correct, he had access to everything. As my husband and business partner, they both had legitimate access to company funds. What they were planning wasn't just theft, it was the complete destruction of everything I had worked for. "Are you going to cry, Mummy?" Isabella asked, climbing onto my lap. "No, sweetheart. Mummy is going to be very strong. Can you tell me exactly what else you heard?" Isabella's innocent face scrunched up as she tried to remember. "Miss Rachel said you were stupid and that you deserved it. Daddy said after tonight you would have nothing left and they could be together forever. They talked about a big airplane in a place called. She struggled with the word. "Switzerland?" "Yes. They said they were going to live there and never come back. Daddy said you would be too broken to fight them." The room spun around me. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of building a life together. 10 years of trusting the man who slept beside me every night, who kissed me goodbye every morning, who told me he loved me just hours ago over dinner. I looked at my daughter's confused face and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not heartbreak that would come later. This was something else entirely. This was the birth of determination. "Isabella, I need you to do something very important for me. Can you be my secret helper?" She nodded eagerly, wiping her eyes. "I need you to go to your room and pack your favorite toys and clothes in your backpack. But you have to be very quiet. Can you do that?" "Are we going on a trip?" "Maybe. But first, Mummy has some work to do. Very important work." As Isabella crept upstairs, I sat alone in my office, staring at the transfer form. The house was quiet except for the sound of Richard's voice drifting from his study down the hall. He was on the phone, probably with Rachel, probably finalizing their plans to destroy me. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was weak. They thought after tonight I would be too broken to fight back. They were wrong. I had built Henderson Tech Solutions with my bare hands, starting with nothing but a laptop and a dream. I had fought through every obstacle, every setback, every person who told me a young black woman couldn't succeed in tech. I had survived poverty, discrimination, and countless people who underestimated me. But I had never faced betrayal like this. I opened my laptop and began typing. If they wanted to play games with my fortune, they were about to discover that I knew how to play too. And I played to win. The first email went to my lawyer. The second went to my accountant. The third went to my most trusted employee, someone Richard and Rachel knew nothing about. By 9 p.m. I had made 7 phone calls and sent 15 emails. Richard thought he was taking everything from me tonight. Instead, he was about to lose everything himself. The war had begun and he didn't even know it yet. 3 hours earlier, I had been Victoria Henderson, loving wife and successful businesswoman. Now, as I sat in my office surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, I was someone else entirely. Someone harder. Someone smarter. Someone who had learned the most painful lesson of her life. I pulled up my laptop and began systematically checking every account, every password, every access point Richard and Rachel had to my business. What I found made my stomach turn. The theft hadn't started tonight. It had been going on for months. Small amounts at first, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Amounts small enough that they wouldn't trigger alerts, but large enough that over 6 months, they added up to nearly $500,000. Money taken from client payments, from supplier accounts, from petty cash funds. They had been stealing from me for months and I had been so busy trusting them that I never noticed. I found the offshore accounts, 3 of them, all opened in the past year. all with Rachel's signature on the applications. I found hotel receipts from their weekend business trips that I now realized were romantic getaways. I found emails between them discussing their plans, laughing about how easy I was to fool. One email made me physically sick. Victoria is so busy trying to be Superwoman that she never pays attention to the details. By the time she figures out what's happening, we'll be long gone. She deserves this for being so arrogant. She actually thinks she built this company alone. Rachel had written that. Rachel, who I had trusted with everything. Rachel, who I had considered my closest friend. Rachel, who had eaten dinner at my table, played with my daughter, held my hand when I cried about the pressures of running a business. But it was Richard's response that broke something inside me. She's always been too proud for her own good. After tomorrow night, she'll learn what it feels like to lose everything. Maybe it will teach her some humility. Besides, I've been carrying her dead weight for years. Time to cut her loose and take what I've earned. Dead weight. 10 years of marriage, and that's what I was to him. Dead weight. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly closed the laptop. Richard appeared in my office doorway, wearing the same smile he'd worn at dinner, the same smile he'd worn every day for 10 years. "Working late again?" he asked, walking over to kiss my forehead. "You know you need to learn to relax." I managed to smile back, though every instinct screamed at me to slap him. "Just catching up on some client reports. You know how it is. That's my hard-working wife." He squeezed my shoulders. "I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late." "I won't. I love you, Richard." The words tasted like poison, but I said them anyway, because I needed him to believe that nothing had changed. I needed him to think I was still the trusting, oblivious woman he thought he was married to. "I love you too, Victoria. Sweet dreams." The moment he left, I grabbed my phone and called my emergency contact at the bank. "James? It's Victoria Henderson. I need you to freeze all access to the Henderson Tech accounts immediately." "Yes, I know it's late. This is an emergency." James Chin had been my banker for 5 years. He had helped me through every expansion, every major purchase, every financial milestone. He trusted my judgment completely. "Victoria, what's wrong? You sound upset." "I've discovered that someone is planning to steal from my accounts tonight. I need everything locked down within the hour. Can you do that?" "Of course. Should I call the police?" "Not yet. I need to handle this carefully. There are complications." While James worked on securing my accounts, I began phase 2 of my plan. I called my lawyer, Sandra Williams, who had been with me since I started the business. "Sandra, I need you to prepare divorce papers and criminal fraud charges. I need them ready by tomorrow morning." "Victoria, slow down. What's happened?" I explained everything: the discovery, the evidence, the planned theft. Sandra listened without interruption. "My God, Victoria. How are you holding up?" "I'm not falling apart, if that's what you're asking. I'm getting even." "Good. That's exactly the attitude you need. I'll have everything ready by 9 a.m. And Victoria? Document everything. Take photos, make copies. We're going to bury them." Next, I called Thomas Brown, my head of IT security. Thomas was young, brilliant, and completely loyal to me. Richard and Rachel barely acknowledged his existence, which was about to become their biggest mistake. "Mrs. Henderson? Is everything okay?" "Thomas, I need you to do something, and I need you to keep it completely confidential. Can you access all of Richard and Rachel's computer activity from the past year? Emails, file transfers, everything?" "Yes, ma'am. That's all within our security protocols." "Should I be worried about something?" "Very worried. I'll explain everything tomorrow. For now, just gather every piece of digital evidence you can find. And Thomas? Make sure they can't delete anything." "Already on it, Mrs. Henderson. Their access will be read only by midnight." By 11 p.m., I had built a fortress around my assets that Richard and Rachel couldn't penetrate. Every account was frozen. Every password was changed. Every access point was blocked. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I walked quietly upstairs and checked on Isabella. She was asleep, her backpack packed and ready by her bed, just as I had asked. My brave, smart little girl. She had saved me tonight, and she didn't even know it. From my bedroom window, I could see Richard's study lights still on. He was probably making final preparations, getting ready to destroy my life. Instead, he was about to discover that the woman he had underestimated was about to become his worst nightmare. The clock struck midnight. Let the games begin. I couldn't sleep, so I spent the night piecing together the full scope of their betrayal. Sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, I spread out printed emails, bank statements, and hotel receipts across the table like evidence in a murder case. In a way, that's exactly what they were: evidence of the murder of my trust, my marriage, and nearly my business. The timeline became clearer with each document. Richard and Rachel's affair had started 18 months ago, during what they called a business trip to Seattle. The hotel records showed they had shared a room. The restaurant receipts showed intimate dinners for two. The text messages I found on our shared phone plan showed a relationship that went from professional to personal to criminal. But what hurt most were the photos. Hidden in Rachel's cloud storage, which Thomas had accessed through our company server, were hundreds of photos. Richard and Rachel at beaches I'd never seen. Richard and Rachel kissing in restaurants I'd never been to. Richard and Rachel looking happy in ways I hadn't seen my husband look in years. In one photo, Rachel was wearing a necklace I recognized. I had helped Richard pick it out for a client's wife 6 months ago. He had asked my advice on what women liked, and I had spent an hour helping him choose the perfect gift for his mistress, the woman who was planning to destroy my life. The business theft had started 3 months after their affair began. Small amounts at first, as I had discovered, but growing bolder as they grew more confident. They had created fake vendor accounts, false expense reports, and phantom consulting fees. Money that should have gone to growing the business, to hiring new employees, to securing our future, had instead funded their romance and their escape plan. I found their travel itinerary, booked for tonight after the planned theft. First-class tickets to Switzerland, hotel reservations at a 5-star resort, rental car arrangements. They had planned everything down to the smallest detail. Everything except for one small problem: me. The more I read, the angrier I became. Not just hurt angry. They hadn't just stolen money. They had stolen my trust, my friendship, my marriage, and my sense of security. They had laughed at me, called me names, planned my destruction while eating at my table and sleeping in my bed. But their biggest mistake was underestimating me. At 6 a.m., Richard came downstairs, dressed in his best suit. He kissed my cheek like he had every morning for 10 years. "Big day today," he said casually. "Rachel and I have that investor meeting in New York. We might be late getting back." I smiled and poured him coffee, the perfect picture of a loving wife. "Good luck, honey. I hope it goes well." "It will. Trust me, after today, everything is going to change for the better." If only he knew how right he was. After Richard left, I called Sandra and asked her to meet me at the office. I also called Detective Harrison Miller, a friend from college who now worked in financial crimes. I had known Mike for 15 years and I trusted him completely. "Victoria, you sounded urgent on the phone. What's going on?" I spread the evidence across my conference table and told him everything. Mike listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. "This is serious, Victoria. We're talking about embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy. They could face serious prison time." "Good. I want them to face serious prison time. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once I file these charges, there's no going back. Your marriage will be over, your business partnership will be destroyed, and this will become very public." I thought about Isabella, sleeping peacefully upstairs while her father planned to destroy her future. I thought about all the employees who depended on Henderson Tech for their livelihoods. I thought about all the clients who trusted us with their business. I thought about every woman who had ever been betrayed by someone they loved. "I'm sure. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." Mike nodded. "Then let's take them down." At 9 a.m., Sandra arrived with the divorce papers and the criminal charges, all perfectly prepared and ready to file. At 10 a.m., Thomas presented me with a complete digital forensic report showing every theft, every lie, every piece of evidence we would need to prosecute. At 11 a.m., I got a text from Richard: "Meeting going great. Big changes coming. Love you." At noon, I got a text from Rachel: "Victoria, you're the best friend a girl could have. Thanks for trusting me with everything." The lies came so easily to them. The deception was so natural. They had been living double lives for 18 months and they were good at it. But I was better. At 2 p.m., I received confirmation that their flight to Switzerland had been canceled due to banking irregularities. At 3 p.m., I received confirmation that all of their credit cards had been frozen pending investigation. At 4 p.m., I received confirmation that warrants had been issued for their arrest. They thought they were going to spend tonight celebrating their successful theft on a plane to Switzerland. Instead, they were going to spend tonight in jail. I looked at the clock. Richard and Rachel would be trying to execute their plan in exactly 8 hours. They would discover that all of their access had been blocked. They would panic. They would realize that their carefully laid plans had crumbled. And then they would discover that I had been 3 steps ahead of them the entire time. The student was about to become the teacher. The victim was about to become the victor. And the woman they thought was too stupid to see through their lies was about to show them exactly how smart she really was. While Richard and Rachel believed they were executing the final steps of their master plan, I was orchestrating something far more sophisticated. Every move they made was being watched, recorded, and documented. Every phone call was being monitored. Every email was being saved. Every transaction was being tracked. I had learned something important about revenge over the past 24 hours. The best revenge isn't hot and emotional. It's cold and calculated. It's planned with the same precision they had used to plan my destruction. Thomas had been busy overnight. His forensic analysis revealed that their theft went back even further than I had realized. They had been stealing from the company for almost 2 years, taking nearly $1 million in total. They had created an entire shadow accounting system, complete with fake vendors, false contracts, and phantom employees. Mrs. Henderson, they're really good at this, Thomas admitted as he showed me the evidence. If your daughter hadn't overheard them, they might have gotten away with it. But they didn't get away with it, I reminded him. And now we have everything we need to make sure they never steal from anyone again. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. When Rachel called me at lunch to chat about weekend plans, I had to sound like the same trusting friend I had always been. When she mentioned how much she valued our friendship and how grateful she was for all my support over the years, I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. Victoria, you know you're like a sister to me, right? She said. I just want you to know how much your friendship means to me. You mean a lot to me too, Rachel. I trust you with everything. The words were true in a twisted way. I did trust her. I trusted her to be exactly as dishonest and greedy as she had proven herself to be. I trusted her to try to steal from me. I trusted her to betray me. And because I trusted her to do those things, I was ready for them. Detective Miller had been coordinating with federal agents, since the money transfers crossed state and international lines. The FBI was now involved and they were taking the case very seriously. Financial crimes like this were their specialty, and they had seen cases like mine before. The good news is that you discovered this before they could complete the theft, Agent Patricia Davis explained during our afternoon meeting. The bad news is that they've already stolen a significant amount. But with the evidence you've gathered, we can recover most of it and make sure they face appropriate consequences. How long will they go to prison? I asked. With this level of evidence? Richard is looking at 10 to 15 years. Rachel could face similar charges, plus additional penalties for violating her fiduciary duty as your business partner. They're going to prison for a long time. That evening, I cooked Richard's favorite dinner. I set the table with our best china. I even lit candles. To anyone watching, it would have looked like a romantic evening between loving spouses. This is nice, Richard said as he sat down. What's the occasion? No occasion. I just wanted to do something special for my husband. He smiled and reached across the table to hold my hand. You're amazing, Victoria. I'm so lucky to have you. I smiled back and squeezed his hand. I'm lucky too. I've learned so much about people lately. About who I can trust and who I can't. About who really cares about me and who's just pretending. Something flickered in his eyes just for a moment, but then his smile returned. That's good. Trust is important in business and in marriage. Yes, it is. Richard, can I ask you something? Of course. If someone betrayed me, really betrayed me, stole from me, lied to me, tried to destroy everything I've worked for, what do you think I should do? He was quiet for a moment and I could see him thinking. I think you should fight back. You're strong, Victoria. Stronger than most people realize. Anyone who tries to hurt you would be making a big mistake. You really think so? I know so. You're the toughest person I know. If someone tried to destroy you, they'd discover that they picked the wrong woman to mess with. I nodded thoughtfully. That's good advice. I'll remember that. After dinner, Richard went to his study to finish some work. I knew he was making final preparations for the theft. I knew he was checking accounts, confirming transfers, getting ready to steal everything I had worked for. What he didn't know was that every keystroke was being recorded. Every phone call was being monitored. Every plan was being documented for use in court. I tucked Isabella into bed and read her a story about a princess who defeated a dragon. Mommy, are you the princess in the story? She asked. Maybe I am, sweetheart. Maybe I am. What about Daddy? Is he the dragon? I kissed her forehead. Daddy is going to learn some very important lessons very soon. But don't worry about that. Mommy is going to take care of everything. At 11 p.m. I received a text from Agent Davis, Everything is in place. We'll move as soon as they attempt the transfer. At 11:30 p.m. I received a text from Detective Miller. Units are standing by. Are you ready for this? At 11:45 p.m. I received a text from Sandra. All papers are filed and ready. You're about to be a free woman. At 11:59 p.m., I sat in my office and watched the clock count down to midnight. In 60 seconds, Richard would try to transfer $2 million out of my business account. In 60 seconds he would discover that his access had been blocked. In 60 seconds he would realize that his perfect plan had fallen apart. In 60 seconds, the woman he thought was too stupid to see through his lies was going to destroy his life the same way he had tried to destroy hers. The clock struck midnight. Game over. Richard's confident footsteps echoed through the house as he walked to his study at exactly midnight. I could hear him settling into his chair, turning on his computer, getting ready to steal my life's work. Through the thin walls, I could hear him actually humming as he prepared to betray me. I sat in my office with my laptop open, watching the attempted login attempts on our company server. Thomas had set up a system that would allow Richard to log in, but would block any actual transfers while recording every action he took. We wanted to catch him in the act, with no possibility of claiming it was a mistake or misunderstanding. 12:01 a.m. First login attempt successful. 12:02 a.m. Account access confirmed. 12:03 a.m. Transfer authorization page opened. 12:04 a.m. Transfer amount entered, $2 million. 12:05 a.m. Destination account entered. 12:06 a.m. Authorization attempted. 12:07 a.m. Transfer blocked, insufficient privileges. I could hear Richard's chair squeaking as he shifted uncomfortably. He tried again. 12:08 a.m. Second authorization attempted. 12:09 a.m. Transfer blocked, account restrictions active. Now I could hear him typing more aggressively. The humming had stopped. 12:10 a.m. Password reset attempted. 12:11 a.m. Password change blocked, admin privileges required. The typing became frantic. I heard him pick up his phone. "Rachel, we have a problem," he whispered urgently. "The transfer isn't working. The system is blocking me." I couldn't hear Rachel's response, but I could hear Richard's growing panic. "No, I'm using the right codes. Something's wrong with the system. No, Victoria doesn't know anything. She was asleep when I came down here. Yes, I'm sure. She made me dinner and told me she loved me 3 hours ago. There's no way she knows. Oh, Richard, if only you knew. Listen, try logging in from your computer. Maybe it's a problem with my access." "What do you mean you can't log in? What do you mean your password isn't working?" I smiled in the darkness. Rachel was about to discover that her access had been revoked at 11 p.m., right after she had sent me that text about how much our friendship meant to her. "This doesn't make sense," Richard continued. "The system was working fine yesterday. No, there weren't any updates scheduled. Victoria never mentioned any security changes." Through my laptop, I watched him try different passwords, different access points, different authorization codes. Every attempt was blocked and recorded. Every failure was documented with timestamps and screenshots. At 12:30 a.m., I heard him slam his fist on his desk. "This is impossible. Someone has locked us out of the system." Someone had. Someone very smart, very angry, and very prepared. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Victoria, are you awake? I'm having trouble accessing some files. Can you check the system?" I smiled as I typed back, "I'm asleep, but I'll check in the morning." "Is it urgent?" "No, not urgent. Just some files I wanted to review." Sleep well. Such a good actress. Even now, with her world falling apart, she was still trying to maintain the lie. At 1 a.m., I heard Richard on the phone again, this time calling our bank's emergency line. I listened as he tried to convince them to process a transfer manually, claiming there was a system error. The bank, of course, refused. They had been instructed to block all transfers and report any attempted unauthorized access. "What do you mean the account is frozen? On whose authority? Victoria Henderson? That's impossible. I'm her husband. I have full access to these accounts. What do you mean there's a fraud investigation?" I heard his chair crash to the floor as he stood up abruptly. His voice rose above a whisper for the first time. "Fraud investigation? What are you talking about? Who initiated a fraud investigation?" The bank representative was apparently explaining the situation, because Richard went completely silent for several minutes. When he finally spoke again, his voice was different. "Scared. How long has this investigation been active? Since when? Are you sure? I need to speak to my wife immediately." I heard his footsteps in the hallway moving fast. He was coming to wake me up, to demand answers, to find out what had gone wrong with his perfect plan. I quickly closed my laptop and slipped into bed, pulling the covers up and closing my eyes. My bedroom door opened and Richard shook my shoulder gently. "Victoria? Honey, wake up. We have a problem." I opened my eyes and blinked sleepily. "Richard? What's wrong? What time is it?" "It's after 1 a.m. Something's wrong with our bank accounts. They're saying there's a fraud investigation. Do you know anything about this?" I sat up, rubbing my eyes and looking confused. "Fraud investigation? What kind of fraud investigation?" "I don't know. The bank won't tell me anything over the phone. They said only you can get information since you initiated it." "I didn't initiate any investigation. Why would I do that?" Richard studied my face in the dim light, looking for any sign that I was lying. I had practiced this expression in the mirror for hours, confused, concerned, completely innocent. "The bank said you called them yesterday and reported suspicious activity on our accounts." "Yesterday?" "Richard, I was in meetings all day yesterday. I never called the bank. There must be some mistake." "That's what I thought. Can you call them first thing in the morning and get this sorted out? I need to access the accounts for a business transfer." "Of course. What kind of business transfer?" He hesitated and I could see him scrambling for a believable lie. "Just some routine payments to vendors. Nothing urgent." "Okay. I'll call them as soon as they open. Try to get some sleep, honey. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." Richard kissed my forehead and left the room, but I could hear him pacing in his study for the next 2 hours. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with frantic texts from Rachel. "Victoria, something's wrong with the system. Can you check the accounts? Richard says there's a fraud investigation. Do you know what's happening? Please call me as soon as you get this." I didn't respond. Let her panic. Let them both panic. They had spent months planning my destruction, and now they were discovering what it felt like to have their own plans fall apart. At 4 a.m., I heard Richard's study door close and his footsteps on the stairs. He was finally going to bed, defeated and confused. Tomorrow he would wake up expecting me to fix the mistake with the bank. Tomorrow he would expect me to restore his access to the accounts he had been stealing from. Tomorrow he was going to discover that the woman he had underestimated was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his life. But tonight, for just a few hours, I let them believe that this was all just a terrible mistake that would be resolved in the morning. I let them believe that I was still the trusting, oblivious wife who would fix everything for them. Because the longer they believed that, the deeper the hole they were digging for themselves. And I wanted that hole to be very, very deep. Morning came with the sounds of Richard moving frantically around the house. I could hear him making phone calls, typing on his computer and pacing between rooms. He was trying to solve a puzzle that had no solution, at least, not the solution he wanted. I made coffee and breakfast as if nothing had happened, humming the same tune I had heard him humming the night before. When he came downstairs, his hair was messy and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Did you sleep well?" I asked cheerfully, kissing his cheek. "Not really. I kept thinking about this bank situation. Can you call them now? They open at 8 a.m. I glanced at the clock. 7:45 a.m. Of course. Let me just finish my coffee. Victoria, this is urgent. I really need to access those accounts today." I looked at him with concern. "Richard, you seem very stressed about this. It's just a bank error. These things happen all the time. Why is one day such a big deal?" He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Because the truth was that he and Rachel were supposed to be on a plane to Switzerland in 12 hours, and their entire plan depended on completing the theft today. "It's just, we have that big client payment due and I don't want any delays." "Which client?" Another pause. "The Morrison account." I nodded sympathetically. There was no Morrison account. Richard was making it up on the spot and we both knew it. At exactly 8 a.m. I called the bank while Richard sat beside me, listening to every word. "Hello, this is Victoria Henderson. I'm calling about the fraud investigation on my accounts." "Yes, I'll hold." Richard watched my face anxiously as I waited for the representative. "Yes, I'm here." "I see. How serious is this investigation? Federal charges? How much money are we talking about?" "Oh my God, that's terrible." "Yes, I understand the accounts need to remain frozen. Of course, I want to cooperate fully." "Yes, I can come in this morning." "Thank you." I hung up the phone and turned to Richard with a shocked expression. "Richard, this is serious. Someone has been stealing money from our company accounts for almost 2 years. The FBI is involved. They think it's an inside job. The color drained from his face. An inside job? Someone with access to our systems, our passwords, our authorization codes. The bank said they've traced almost $1 million in unauthorized transfers. $1 million? His voice cracked. I have to go to the bank this morning to review the evidence. Richard, they asked me about anyone who has access to our accounts. I'll have to tell them about you and Rachel. He stood up abruptly. You can't seriously think that Rachel or I would steal from you. Of course not. But they'll want to question everyone with access, just to eliminate possibilities. It's standard procedure. Richard nodded, but I could see panic building behind his eyes. When do you have to go to the bank? In an hour. They want me to review transaction records and identify any suspicious activity. I paused for effect. Richard, I'm scared. What if we lose everything? What if whoever did this has taken money we can't recover? That won't happen, he said quickly. I'm sure the bank has insurance for this kind of thing. I hope so. I've worked so hard to build this company. If someone destroyed it... I let my voice trail off and wiped away a fake tear. Richard put his arms around me and I had to force myself not to pull away. Don't worry, honey. We'll figure this out. Everything will be okay. If only he knew that everything was already figured out, and it was definitely not going to be okay for him. My phone rang. Rachel's name appeared on the screen. I should take this, I told Richard. Maybe she has some ideas about the security breach. Victoria. Rachel's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. I've been trying to reach you all morning. Something's wrong with the company accounts. I know. Richard told me you were having trouble accessing files. It turns out someone has been stealing from us. The FBI is investigating. The FBI? Her voice went up an octave. Rachel, this is serious. They think it's someone with inside access. They're going to want to question all of us. Question us? About what? About our access to the accounts, our passwords, our transaction history. They need to eliminate us as suspects so they can focus on finding the real thief. There was a long silence on the other end. Victoria, I need to tell you something. Can we meet for lunch today? I'd love to, but I'm spending the day at the bank reviewing evidence. Rain check. This is important, Victoria. I really need to talk to you. Is everything okay? You sound upset. I'm just worried about the company, about what this investigation might mean for our business. Don't worry. The truth will come out and whoever did this will face the consequences. Justice always wins in the end. After I hung up, Richard was staring at me with an unreadable expression. What did Rachel want? She's worried about the investigation. She wanted to have lunch, but I told her I'd be at the bank all day. Maybe I should come with you. That's sweet, but the bank said they only want to meet with the primary account holder first. If they need to speak with you later, they'll schedule a separate meeting. Richard looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't think of a good reason why he needed to be there. At 10 a.m., I left for the bank, but instead of going inside, I drove to the FBI field office where Agent Davis was waiting for me. We had planned this carefully. I needed Richard and Rachel to think I was at the bank, unaware of their crimes, while I was actually coordinating their arrest. How are they handling the pressure? Agent Davis asked. Richard barely slept. Rachel is panicking. They know something is wrong, but they still think I don't know about their theft or their affair. Good. The longer they think that, the more likely they are to make mistakes. Have they tried to contact each other? Constantly. We've been monitoring their calls. They're scrambling to figure out what went wrong, but they haven't considered the possibility that I discovered their plan. What about the money they've already stolen? Thomas traced most of it to their offshore accounts. With the evidence we have, you should be able to recover at least 80% of it. Agent Davis nodded. We'll execute the arrest warrants this afternoon. Are you sure you're ready for this? Once we arrest them, everything becomes public. I'm ready. I've been ready since the moment my daughter warned me about their plan. At noon, I returned home to find Richard pacing in the living room. His phone was in his hand and he looked like he had been making calls all morning. How did it go at the bank? He asked immediately. Terrible. The evidence is overwhelming. Whoever did this was very sophisticated. They created fake vendor accounts, false expense reports, phantom consulting fees. The FBI agent said it was one of the most elaborate schemes they'd seen. Did they show you the evidence? Some of it. Bank transfer records, forged signatures, altered documents. Richard, the person who did this, had complete access to our systems. They knew all our passwords, all our procedures, all our security protocols. I watched his face carefully as I spoke. He was trying to look concerned, but I could see the fear growing in his eyes. Did they say when they think this started? About 18 months ago. Small amounts at first, then larger and larger thefts. The agent said the thief was probably planning one final big score before disappearing. Richard went very still. Disappearing? The FBI thinks whoever did this was planning to steal everything and flee the country. They found evidence of offshore accounts and travel arrangements. What kind of travel arrangements? Flights to Switzerland, hotel reservations, rental cars. The whole thing was planned out. Richard sat down heavily on the couch. When were these flights supposed to leave? Tonight. I sat down beside him and took his hand. Can you believe it? Tonight. If the bank hadn't caught this when they did, we might have lost everything. Richard's hand was shaking in mine. Tonight, he repeated quietly. The FBI agent said we were very lucky. One more day and the thief would have succeeded completely. Lucky, he whispered. I squeezed his hand. Richard, are you okay? You look pale. I'm just shocked. I can't believe someone would do this to us. I know. It's hard to accept that someone we trusted could betray us like this. But the important thing is that we caught them before they could destroy everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Davis. Arrest warrants signed. Moving in at 3 p.m. I glanced at the clock. 2:30 p.m. Richard, I need to run to the office for a few minutes. The FBI wants me to check some files. I'll come with you. No, you should stay here with Isabella. She's been asking questions about why Mommy and Daddy seem upset. Maybe you could spend some time with her? Richard nodded absently. He was clearly trying to figure out his next move, trying to find a way out of the trap that was closing around him. But there was no way out. The trap was already closed. As I drove to the office, I thought about Isabella's innocent face when she had warned me about her father's plans. She had saved us both and she didn't even know it. At 3 p.m., I was sitting in my office when Agent Davis called. It's done. We have them both in custody. Both of them? Rachel was at her apartment trying to book flights out of the country. Richard was at home attempting to access your accounts from his personal computer. They're both being charged with conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. I closed my eyes and felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized was there. What happens now? Now you get your life back, Mrs. Henderson. And they face justice for what they've done. Justice. It was a beautiful word. The phone call came at 3:47 p.m. I was sitting in my office, pretending to work while actually watching the news for any reports about the arrests. When my phone rang and Richard's name appeared on the screen, I knew it was over. Victoria. His voice was hollow, defeated. I need you to come to the police station. The police station? Richard, what's wrong? Are you hurt? I've been arrested. So has Rachel. They're saying we stole money from the company. I made my voice sound shocked and confused. Arrested? That's impossible. There must be some mistake. Victoria, listen to me carefully. Don't say anything to anyone until you talk to a lawyer. Don't answer any questions. Don't sign anything. Do you understand? Richard, you're scaring me. What's happening? Just get a lawyer and come down here. We need to talk. The line went dead. I sat in my office for a moment, processing the fact that it was finally over. After months of planning, after days of pretending, after years of being betrayed, justice was finally being served. But I wasn't ready to go to the police station yet. I had one more stop to make first. I drove home and found Isabella playing in her room, completely unaware that her world had just changed forever. She looked up when I entered, her innocent brown eyes bright with curiosity. Mommy, where's Daddy? He was acting very strange today. I sat down on her bed and pulled her into my lap. Sweetheart, Daddy has done some things that were wrong and he's in trouble with the police. What kind of trouble? He took money that didn't belong to him. And he lied to Mommy about it. Isabella was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the surprising wisdom that children sometimes possess. Is that why you were sad yesterday? When I told you about Daddy's plan? Yes, baby. But you know what? You saved us. By telling Mommy what you heard, you helped us stop Daddy from doing something even worse. Will Daddy come home? I hesitated. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her father is going to prison? How do you tell her that the man she loves has betrayed everyone who trusted him? Daddy is going to be away for a while. He needs to face the consequences of what he did. But Mommy is going to take care of you and we're going to be okay. Are you going to be sad? I was sad when I found out what Daddy did. But now I'm not sad anymore. I'm proud that we're strong enough to handle this and I'm grateful that we have each other. Isabella hugged me tightly. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, sweetheart. more than anything in the world. At 5 p.m. I finally drove to the police station. Detective Miller met me in the lobby, his expression professional but sympathetic. "How are you holding up, Victoria?" "Better than I expected." "Is it really over?" "The arrests are complete. Both suspects are in custody. They'll be arraigned tomorrow morning." "What are the charges?" "Multiple felony counts. Conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, computer crimes." Richard is also facing additional charges for identity theft and forgery. "With the evidence we have, they're looking at serious prison time." I nodded. "Can I see him?" "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "I need closure, Mike. I need to look him in the eye and let him know that I know everything." Detective Miller led me to a small conference room where Richard was sitting with a court-appointed lawyer. He looked up when I entered, and I saw something I had never seen in his face before: defeat. "Victoria." He stood up but made no move to approach me. "Thank you for coming." "The lawyer says I have 15 minutes, I said, remaining standing near the door. "Victoria, I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just a few thousand here and there. But then you fell in love with Rachel and decided to steal everything I had worked for so you could run away together." He stared at me in shock. "You know about Rachel?" "I know about everything, Richard. The affair, the theft, the offshore accounts, the travel plans. I know about every lie you've told me for the past 18 months. "How long have you known?" "Since Isabella warned me about your plan. My 6-year-old daughter was the one who saved me from my husband's betrayal." "Think about that for a moment." Richard sank back into his chair. "Isabella told you?" "She overheard you and Rachel planning the final theft. She came to me with the bank transfer form, asking why her daddy was going to take away Mommy's fortune." "My God. Victoria, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Are you sorry you did it, or are you sorry you got caught?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know anymore. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know how it got this far." "I know how it got this far. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was weak. You thought I would never figure it out. You underestimated me." "I never thought you were stupid." "Yes, you did. I read your emails, Richard. I saw what you really think of me. Dead weight, you called me. Someone who doesn't deserve the success I've earned." Richard looked down at his hands. "I was angry. I felt like I was living in your shadow. Like everything I did was compared to what you had accomplished. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to take what I thought I deserved. And what you thought you deserved was everything I had worked for, plus the right to humiliate me with my best friend." "Victoria." "No. You don't get to explain this away. You don't get to make excuses. You made a choice to betray me, to steal from me, to lie to me every single day for 18 months. You made a choice to destroy our family. Those were your choices, and now you get to live with the consequences." I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Richard." "Yes." "That night when you told me I was strong enough to fight back against anyone who tried to hurt me?" "You were right. I'm that strong." "Thank you for reminding me." As I walked out of the police station, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The nightmare was over. The lies had been exposed. Justice was being served. And tomorrow I would begin the process of rebuilding my life without the people who had tried to destroy it. Tomorrow I would start fresh. Tomorrow I would be free. The next morning brought a media storm I hadn't expected. Local news stations had picked up the story: tech CEO's husband and business partner arrested in $1 million fraud scheme. My phone rang constantly with requests for interviews, but I ignored them all. This wasn't about publicity. This was about justice. Sandra met me at the courthouse for the arraignment. "Are you ready for this?" she asked as we walked up the steps. "I've been ready for months, even when I didn't know it." The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and a few of our company employees who had heard the news. I saw Thomas in the back row, giving me a supportive nod. I also saw some of Richard's family members, looking shocked and confused. When Richard and Rachel were brought in wearing orange jumpsuits and handcuffs, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly, but a sense that the universe was finally balanced again. They looked terrible. Rachel's usually perfect hair was stringy and unwashed. Richard's confident posture had collapsed into something defeated and small. They didn't look like master criminals. They looked like what they were: two people who had made very bad choices and were about to pay for them. The prosecutor, District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, laid out the charges methodically. "Your Honor, the defendants engaged in a sophisticated scheme to defraud Henderson Tech Solutions of approximately $1.2 million over an 18-month period. They created false vendor accounts, submitted fraudulent expense reports, and forged authorization documents. Additionally, they planned to steal an additional $2 million on the night of their arrest, with the intention of fleeing to Switzerland. Richard's lawyer tried to argue for reasonable bail, but DA Walsh countered effectively. These defendants were literally planning to leave the country when they were arrested. They have offshore accounts, forged travel documents, and have shown a pattern of sophisticated deception over many months. They are significant flight risks. The judge agreed. Bail is denied. The defendants will remain in custody pending trial. I watched Richard's face when the judge spoke those words. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. This wasn't a mistake that could be fixed with explanations or excuses. This was the real consequence of real crimes. After the arraignment, DA Walsh approached me in the hallway. "Mrs. Henderson, I want you to know that we're taking this case very seriously. With the evidence you've provided, we expect to secure convictions on all charges." "What kind of sentences are we looking at?" For the amount of money involved and the sophistication of the scheme, Richard could face 15-20 years in federal prison. Rachel, as your business partner, violated her fiduciary duty, which carries additional penalties. She's looking at 10-15 years. I nodded. Those numbers felt abstract right now, but I knew they represented justice for what had been done to me. What about the money they stole? We've frozen all of their offshore accounts. We should be able to recover about 85% of what was taken. The rest may be tied up in legal proceedings, but you'll get most of it back. That evening, I sat in my office reviewing the financial damage more carefully. Thomas had prepared a complete analysis of what had been stolen and when. The pattern was clear. Small amounts at first, growing larger as they became more confident. But what struck me most was how careful they had been to steal amounts that wouldn't trigger automatic alerts. They had studied my business, learned my habits, identified my blind spots. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a calculated, long-term plan to destroy me. My phone rang. It was Rachel's mother, Mrs. Martinez. "Victoria, I don't know what to say. I'm so ashamed of what Rachel did to you. Mrs. Martinez, you don't need to apologize for Rachel's choices. She was like a different person when she talked about the business. Always complaining about being in your shadow, about not getting enough credit. I told her she should be grateful to have such a successful partner, but she wouldn't listen. I'm sorry this happened to your family too. What Rachel did was wrong. Completely wrong. But Victoria, she's still my daughter. Is there any way, any possibility of working something out without prison?" I was quiet for a moment. A year ago, I might have considered it. I might have been willing to work out some kind of private settlement to avoid destroying Rachel's life completely. But that was before I knew about the affair. Before I knew about the emails where they laughed at me. Before I knew about the 18 months of lies and theft. Before I knew that they had planned to leave me with nothing while they lived happily ever after on my stolen money. Mrs. Martinez, Rachel didn't just steal money from me. She stole my trust, my friendship, and my sense of security. She laughed at me while she planned my destruction. There are consequences for choices like that. I understand. I just had to ask. After I hung up, I felt the weight of what I had set in motion. 2 people were going to prison because of decisions I had made. 2 families were being destroyed. Children would grow up without parents. But then I thought about Isabella, and how close she had come to growing up without her college fund, without her home, without the security I had worked so hard to provide. I thought about my employees who depended on Henderson Tech for their livelihoods. I thought about my clients who trusted us with their business. Richard and Rachel had made their choices knowing the potential consequences. They had chosen to steal. They had chosen to lie. They had chosen to betray everyone who trusted them. I had simply chosen to stop them. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, media interviews, and business recovery efforts. The story had attracted national attention, partly because of the amount of money involved, but mostly because of the family drama. "Wife outsmarts husband's theft plot" was the headline that seemed to stick. I gave one interview to a business magazine that wanted to focus on the lessons for other entrepreneurs. "Trust is essential in business," I told the reporter. "But verification is equally important. I learned that the hard way." What advice would you give to other business owners? Pay attention to the details. Watch for patterns. And remember that the people closest to you have the most access to hurt you. Don't be paranoid, but don't be naive either. Do you think you'll ever be able to trust a business partner again? I think I'll be smarter about how I structure those relationships. Trust but verify. Always verify. 3 months after the arrest, Rachel's lawyer contacted Sandra about a plea deal. Rachel was willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperating with the prosecution against Richard. What do you think? Sandra asked me. What would she get with a plea deal? Probably 5-7 years instead of 10-15. And she'd have to pay full restitution. I thought about it for a day before giving my answer. No deal. They planned this together. They should face the consequences together. Are you sure? A plea deal would guarantee a conviction and save you from having to testify at trial. I want to testify. I want to look them in the eye and tell the world exactly what they did. I want there to be no doubt about who the victim was and who the criminals were. Sandra smiled. Then we go to trial. The trial was scheduled for 6 months away. In the meantime, I had a business to rebuild and a daughter to raise. And for the first time in 18 months, I could do both without worrying about who was betraying me. 6 months later, I walked into the federal courthouse wearing my best business suit and my mother's pearl necklace. The trial had been front-page news for weeks, and the courtroom was packed with reporters, legal observers, and curious members of the public. Richard and Rachel sat at the defendant's table, looking older and more worn than they had at the arraignment. Prison had not been kind to either of them. They refused to make eye contact with me as I took my seat in the witness section. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. D.A. Walsh presented bank records, email evidence, security footage, and digital forensics that painted a clear picture of an elaborate conspiracy to defraud me and my company. Thomas testified about the computer crimes, Detective Miller testified about the investigation, and Agent Davis testified about the federal charges. But the most damaging testimony came from their own digital communications. The jury heard Richard's emails calling me dead weight and saying I deserved to lose everything. They heard Rachel's messages about how arrogant I was and how easy I was to fool. They saw the hotel receipts, the travel plans, the offshore account statements. When it was my turn to testify, I told the truth. All of it. Mrs. Henderson, De Walsh began, how long were you married to the defendant Richard Coleman? 10 years. And how long was Rachel Martinez your business partner? 8 years. I trusted her completely. She was like a sister to me. When did you first discover their theft? When my 6-year-old daughter came to me with a bank transfer form she had found. She had overheard them planning to steal $2 million that night and flee the country. A murmur went through the courtroom. The image of a child warning her mother about her father's crimes was powerful and heartbreaking. How did you feel when you realized what they had done? Devastated. Not just because of the money but because of the betrayal. These were the two people I trusted most in the world. They had access to everything, my business, my home, my family. And they used that access to plan my destruction. Did you ever suspect their affair? Never. They were very careful to hide it. I actually helped Richard pick out jewelry for Rachel, thinking it was for a client's wife. I was so trusting that I helped him buy gifts for his mistress. The defense lawyers tried to paint Richard and Rachel as victims of circumstance, people who had made mistakes but weren't true criminals. Richard's lawyer argued that he felt emasculated by my success and had acted out of desperation. Rachel's lawyer claimed she had been manipulated by Richard and was more of a victim than a perpetrator. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury saw through their excuses. During cross-examination, Richard's lawyer tried to suggest that I had somehow driven my husband to commit these crimes. Mrs. Henderson, isn't it true that you were often absent from home, working long hours and traveling for business? I was building a successful company that supported our family and employed dozens of people. Yes, that required hard work. Isn't it true that your husband felt neglected and unappreciated? If my husband felt neglected, he should have talked to me about it. He shouldn't have stolen from me and planned to destroy my life. But surely you must accept some responsibility for the breakdown of your marriage? I looked directly at Richard for the first time during the trial. I accept responsibility for trusting people who didn't deserve my trust. I accept responsibility for being naive about human nature. But I do not accept responsibility for their choice to commit crimes against me. The trial lasted 3 weeks. During closing arguments, D.A. Walsh reminded the jury that this wasn't just about money. This case is about betrayal of the deepest kind. The defendants didn't just steal money. They stole trust. They stole security. They stole peace of mind. Victoria Henderson built a successful business through hard work and determination, and these defendants planned to destroy it all for their own selfish gain. They showed no remorse, no consideration for the lives they would ruin. They deserve no mercy from this court. The defense made one final attempt to generate sympathy, focusing on the defendants' families and the impact of long prison sentences. But it was too little too late. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of money laundering, how do you find? Guilty. The verdict continued for 17 separate charges. Guilty on all counts for both defendants. Richard stared straight ahead, showing no emotion. Rachel broke down crying, finally understanding that her life as she knew it was over. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Sandra and I met with DA Walsh to discuss victim impact statements. "This is your chance to tell the court how their crimes affected you," Walsh explained. "You can talk about the financial impact, the emotional impact, the effect on your daughter and your business. I want them to understand that their actions had consequences beyond what they planned. They didn't just hurt me. They hurt my employees, my clients, my daughter. They hurt everyone who depended on Henderson Tech." 2 weeks later, I stood before Judge Patricia Williams and delivered my impact statement. "Your Honor, when I started Henderson Tech Solutions 8 years ago, I believed that hard work, honesty, and treating people fairly would lead to success. I was right about that. But I also believed that if I treated people well, they would treat me the same way. I was wrong about that. The defendants didn't just steal money from me. They stole my sense of security, my ability to trust, my peace of mind. They planned to leave me with nothing, no business, no savings, no future for my daughter. They laughed about it. They celebrated my anticipated destruction. But they underestimated me. They thought I was weak, that I would be too broken to fight back. They were wrong about that too. I ask this court to impose sentences that reflect the seriousness of their crimes and send a message that this kind of betrayal will not be tolerated." Judge Williams looked at Richard and Rachel with obvious disgust. "Mr. Coleman, Ms. Martinez, you have been convicted of serious crimes that represent a profound breach of trust. You violated the faith of someone who loved you, trusted you, and depended on you. Your actions were calculated, deliberate, and cruel. Mr. Coleman, you are sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Ms. Martinez, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Both defendants will pay full restitution and forfeit all assets obtained through criminal activity." As the bailiff led them away in handcuffs, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. It was over. Finally, completely over. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked how I felt about the sentences. "I feel like justice has been served. Now I can focus on rebuilding and moving forward." "Do you think the sentences were fair?" "I think they got exactly what they deserved. Actions have consequences and they're finally facing theirs." That night, I tucked Isabella into bed and read her a story about a princess who defeated not one but 2 dragons. "Mommy, did the bad people go away forever?" "For a very long time, sweetheart. Long enough for us to build a beautiful new life." "Are you sad about Daddy?" "I'm sad about what Daddy chose to do. But I'm not sad that he can't hurt us anymore. I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, baby. We're going to be just fine." And for the first time in months, I truly believed that was true. 1 year later, I stood in the conference room of Henderson Tech Solutions' new headquarters, looking out at a team that had grown from 12 employees to 43. The company hadn't just survived Richard and Rachel's betrayal, it had thrived. "The Q4 numbers are in," Thomas announced to the room, "and I'm happy to report that we exceeded projections by 23%. This has been our most successful year ever." The applause felt genuine, and I realized how different the energy in the room was now. Without the undercurrent of deception and theft that had poisoned our workplace for so long, the entire company had flourished. After the meeting, I walked back to my office and found Isabella sitting at my desk, working on her homework. At 7 years old, she was smart, confident, and surprisingly wise about the world. The trial and its aftermath had been difficult for her, but she had handled it with a maturity that amazed me. "How was school today?" I asked, sitting down beside her. "Good. We learned about fractions. And Tommy Wilson said his dad saw you on TV again." "What did you tell him?" "I told him my mommy is famous for being smart and catching bad guys." I smiled. Isabella had developed her own way of understanding what had happened. In her mind, I was like a superhero who had defeated villains and saved the day. It was a narrative that worked for a 7-year-old, and it wasn't entirely wrong. "Are you ready for dinner? Miguel is cooking tonight." Miguel Santos had joined our household 6 months ago as a live-in chef and household manager. At 35, he was kind, reliable, and wonderful with Isabella. He was also handsome, funny, and had gradually become much more than an employee. Our relationship had developed slowly and carefully. After everything I had been through, I was cautious about trusting anyone romantically. But Miguel had proven himself to be exactly who he appeared to be: honest, supportive, and genuinely caring about both Isabella and me. Is Miguel making his special pasta? Isabella asked eagerly. I believe so. And I think he mentioned something about chocolate cake for dessert. Isabella jumped up and ran toward the kitchen, and I followed at a more leisurely pace, enjoying the sounds of a happy household. Miguel was indeed making his special pasta, a recipe his grandmother had taught him, and the kitchen smelled amazing. He looked up when we entered and smiled the warm, genuine smile that had first attracted me to him. How was your day, beautiful? He asked, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. Productive. The quarterly numbers were excellent, and we signed 2 new major clients. I'm proud of you. You've built something incredible. That evening, after Isabella was in bed, Miguel and I sat on the back porch of our new house, looking out at the garden we had planted together. The house was smaller than the mansion I had shared with Richard, but it felt more like home than anywhere I had ever lived. I got a letter today, I told him, pulling an envelope from my pocket. From who? Richard. He's been writing to me from prison, asking for forgiveness. Miguel was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about that? Honestly? Nothing. I don't hate him anymore, but I don't forgive him either. He made his choices and now he's living with the consequences. That's not my responsibility anymore. What did the letter say? The same thing they all say. That he's sorry, that he's learned his lesson, that he wants to make amends. But he's not sorry he did it. He's sorry he got caught. Are you going to respond? No. I've said everything I needed to say to him at the trial. This chapter of my life is closed. Miguel reached over and took my hand. I love how strong you are. I love how you rebuilt your life from nothing. I didn't rebuild from nothing. I rebuilt from something much worse than nothing. I rebuilt from betrayal and lies and theft. But that made me stronger. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Isabella hadn't overheard their plan? I had thought about that question many times. They would have succeeded. They would have taken everything and disappeared, and I would have spent years trying to recover. But they didn't succeed, because they underestimated the power of a mother's love and a child's innocence. And now we have everything they tried to take away from us, plus some things we never had before. Real trust, real partnership, real love. Miguel leaned over and kissed me properly. I love you, Victoria. I love you too. 6 months later, Miguel proposed during a company picnic, with Isabella's enthusiastic assistance and all of our employees cheering. The ring was simple and beautiful, and when he asked me to marry him, I said yes without hesitation. The wedding was small and private, held in our backyard with just our closest friends and family. Isabella was the maid of honor, wearing a pink dress she had picked out herself. Thomas walked me down the aisle, having become like a brother to me over the past 2 years. During the ceremony, I thought about how different my life was from what it had been 3 years earlier. I had lost a husband and business partner who had betrayed me, but I had gained a true partner who supported my dreams and loved my daughter as his own. As we exchanged vows, I promised Miguel honesty, respect, and partnership, everything that had been missing from my first marriage. He promised to love both Isabella and me, to support my dreams, and to never take our trust for granted. You may kiss the bride, the minister announced, and as Miguel kissed me, I heard Isabella cheering loudly in the background. Later that evening, as we danced under string lights in our backyard, Miguel whispered in my ear, "Are you happy?" I looked around at our friends celebrating, at Isabella dancing with Thomas, at the life we had built together from the ashes of betrayal and lies. I'm more than happy, I told him. I'm free. 3 years after that terrible night when Isabella had warned me about Richard's plan, Henderson Tech Solutions was valued at over $100 million. We had offices in 3 cities, over 200 employees, and contracts with some of the biggest companies in the country. But more importantly, I had learned to trust again. Not blindly, not naively, but with wisdom and careful judgment. I had learned that betrayal doesn't destroy you, it teaches you. It makes you stronger, smarter, more careful about who you let into your inner circle. Richard was released on parole after serving 12 years of his sentence. He tried to contact me once, through his lawyer, asking for a meeting. I declined. That chapter of my life was closed and I had no interest in reopening it. Rachel served her full sentence and moved across the country after her release. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had started a small consulting business and was trying to rebuild her life. I wished her well from a distance, but I had no desire to reconnect. Isabella, now a confident teenager, often asked me about those difficult years and what I had learned from them. The most important lesson, I would tell her, is that you are stronger than you think you are. When life tries to break you, you have 2 choices. You can let it destroy you or you can use it to build something better. I chose to build something better. But weren't you scared, Mommy? Terrified. But being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. On the 5th anniversary of the night Isabella had saved us both, I took her to dinner at our favorite restaurant. She was now 12 years old, smart and strong and everything I had hoped she would become. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't told you about Daddy's plan?" she asked over dessert. "Sometimes. But then I remember that you did tell me and that changed everything. You saved us, sweetheart. Your honesty and bravery saved our entire future. I'm glad I told you. Even though it was scary. So am I." That was the night you taught me that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. As we drove home that evening, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this point. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed us had actually set us free. Free from lies, free from people who didn't value us, free to build something authentic and lasting. Henderson Tech Solutions continued to grow and prosper. Miguel and I had 2 more children, twin boys who filled our house with laughter and chaos. Isabella became a successful lawyer, specializing in financial crimes. She often said that watching me fight back against Richard and Rachel had inspired her career choice. Years later, when people asked me about those dark days and how I had survived them, I always gave the same answer. I learned that your worst moments can become your greatest strengths. The people who try to destroy you often end up teaching you how powerful you really are. But most importantly, I learned that love and truth will always defeat lies and betrayal, as long as you're brave enough to fight for them. The little girl who had whispered a warning about her father's plans had grown up to understand that sometimes the most important thing you can do is tell the truth, even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. And the woman who had been betrayed by the people she trusted most had learned that trust is not about being naive, it's about being wise enough to know who deserves it and strong enough to act when someone violates it. In the end, Richard and Rachel had tried to take everything from me. Instead, they had given me the greatest gift of all, the knowledge of my own strength and the freedom to use it. The story that began with a whispered warning from a frightened child had become a testament to the power of truth, the importance of courage, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who had saved each other. And they all lived happily ever after, not because life was perfect, but because they had learned to face its imperfections with wisdom, strength, and love.